The capture the neural disruptor's aftershock still coursed through Corporal Marcus Reed's spine as consciousness returned in violent waves. His vision swam, focusing slowly on the sterile white ceiling above him. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth, and every breath sent fire through his cracked ribs. "Subject is awakening," a voice spoke in accented galactic standard. "Vitals are stabilizing within acceptable parameters." Marcus tried to turn his head, but restraints held him firmly to the medical table. Through his peripheral vision, he glimpsed tall, slender figures moving with clinical precision. The Vetheri. Their pale blue skin seemed to glow under the harsh laboratory lights, and their elongated skulls housed minds that viewed humanity as nothing more than fascinating specimens. "This one survived longer than expected," another voice observed coldly. "The neural disruptor was set to maximum output. Most humans would have suffered permanent brain damage." "Indeed, Overlord Zephyr," the first voice replied with what Marcus recognized as deference. "His resilience is ... noteworthy." Marcus had heard the stories from other captured soldiers who'd somehow escaped. The Vetheri Empire's research facilities were where humans went to disappear. They studied human physiology, psychology, and breaking. Points with the same detached interest a child might show dissecting insects. The border skirmish at Kepler Station had been a massacre. His unit had been outnumbered 10-1, but they'd held the line for 18 hours before the Vetheri overwhelmed their position. Marcus had watched his squad leader, Sergeant Davis, take a plasma bolt to the chest while covering their retreat. The memory sent fresh rage through his battered body. "Begin preliminary examination," Overlord Zephyr commanded from somewhere Marcus couldn't see. "I want full biological scans, stress tolerance tests, and psychological profiling completed within." "The hour?" "Yes, Overlord," the first voice responded. Marcus caught a glimpse of her now, a Vetheri female with intricate silver markings along her temples. Unlike the others, her movements seemed less mechanical, more ... careful ... doctor. Nissa Keth had overseen hundreds of human examinations. She knew the routine by heart, cataloged the specimen's physical condition, test pain thresholds, map neural pathways, then begin the slow process of breaking down their mental defenses. It was efficient, thorough, and completely devoid of what humans called mercy. But as she approached the restraint table, something in the human's eyes gave her pause. Not just fear, she'd seen that countless times. This was different. Despite his injuries, despite knowing his fate, there was defiance there. And underneath it, something that made her pause. Hope. "Specimen shows unusual neural activity," she reported, buying time she couldn't explain needing. "Recommend extended preliminary assessment." The human's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Dr. Keth felt something she'd never experienced before. Doubt about her empire's methods. The examination, subject designation, Human 7739, Dr. Keth announced. To the recording system, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. Species, Homo sapiens. Approximate age, 28 standard years. Captured during defensive action at Kepler Station. Marcus watched her work, noting how her hands moved with practiced precision across the medical scanner. The device hummed softly as it mapped his injuries with uncomfortable thoroughness. 3 cracked ribs, internal bleeding, severe neural. Trauma. The list continued growing on her display. "Your pain receptors are quite active," she observed, making notes. "Yet you're not screaming. Most humans at this stage are less composed. Disappointing you?" Marcus managed through gritted teeth. Dr. Keth paused, stylus hovering over her tablet. The question caught her off guard. In her 5 years of human research, none had ever shown curiosity about her expectations. They begged, cursed, or fell silent. They didn't engage. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Cognitive function remains intact despite significant trauma. Specimen shows remarkable psychological resilience. From the observation chamber above, Overlord Zephyr's voice crackled through the speakers. Proceed with pain threshold testing. We need baseline measurements before the interrogation phase. Dr. Keth's hand moved toward the neural stimulator, but something made her hesitate. The human was watching her with those strange eyes again, not pleading, but somehow understanding, as if he recognized her internal struggle. "What's your name?" she asked quietly, a question that violated every protocol. "Marcus Reed," he replied without hesitation. "Corporal, United Earth Defense Corps. Serial number—" "I don't need your military designation," she interrupted, surprising herself. "I meant ... what do people call you when you're not a soldier?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus studied her face, seeing something that didn't belong in a V3 research facility. Genuine curiosity. "Friends call me Mark," he said finally. "My sister calls me idiot, but that's because I joined the military instead of becoming a teacher like she wanted." Dr. Keth felt something shift inside her chest, a strange tightness she'd never experienced. "You wanted to be a teacher?" "History," Marcus nodded. "Figured if people understood how we got into these messes, maybe they'd stop making the same mistakes. And yet you became a soldier. Someone had to stand between the Vethery and the colonies. Might as well be someone who understands what we're fighting for." The neural stimulator felt heavy in Dr. Keth's hand. She'd used it hundreds of times, watched subjects writhe in agony as she calibrated their pain responses. But now, looking at Marcus and Mark, she found herself thinking about his sister, about the students he'd never teach, about the history he'd never help others understand. "Dr. Keth," Overlord Zephyr's voice carried a warning. "Begin the pain threshold assessment immediately." Her superior's words echoed in the chamber, but all she could hear was Marcus saying he'd stood between her people and the colonies, not for glory or hatred, but to protect something he believed in. The stimulator trembled in her grip as she raised it toward his temple. "The choice, proceed, Dr. Keth." Overlord Zephyr's tone carried the weight of absolute authority. Through the observation window, his pale yellow eyes fixed on her with growing impatience. The neural stimulator should be set to level 7 for initial baseline readings. Dr. Keth's fingers hovered over the device's control matrix. Level 7 would cause excruciating pain without permanent damage, the perfect starting point for what her people called behavioral conditioning. She'd performed this procedure so many times it had become automatic. But today felt different. Today, she knew the subject's name was Marcus, that he had a sister who called him an idiot, that he'd dreamed of teaching children about history. "Mark," she whispered, so quietly the recording devices wouldn't detect it. "I need you to understand something. What I'm about to do. It's your job," he said simply. "I get it." The understanding in his voice nearly broke her resolve. He wasn't angry or afraid. He was accepting his fate with the same quiet courage that had probably kept him fighting at Kepler, stationed long after any reasonable person would have surrendered. "No," she said, louder now. "It's not just my job. It's wrong." Overlord Zephyr's voice crackled with warning. Dr. Keth explained the delay. "Recalibrating the neural interface," she called back, buying precious seconds. Her hands moved over the stimulator's controls, but instead of setting it to level 7, she began accessing its medical subroutines. Hidden within the torture device's programming were healing protocols, regenerative sequences designed to keep subjects alive longer. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, seeing her rapid adjustments. "Something that's probably going to get us both killed," she replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was considering. "Mark, your injuries are severe. Without treatment, you'll die within hours. The blood loss alone. And with treatment? With proper treatment, you'll live long enough for them to break you slowly." Marcus studied her face, seeing the conflict written in every line. "But you're not going to give me proper treatment, are you?" Dr. Keth looked up at the observation window where Overlord Zephyr waited. Then she looked back at Marcus at this. Human who'd chosen to protect others, who'd answered her questions with honesty instead of hatred, who was facing death with more dignity than most Vetheri showed facing life. "I'm going to give you something else," she said, her decision crystallizing. With each word, something that will heal your injuries completely, something that will give you strength enough to escape. Why? The question that had been building in her mind finally found its answer. Because my people are wrong about yours. And someone needs to stand up and say it. She activated the regenerative sequence, feeling the neural stimulator transform from instrument of torture to beacon of hope. The device hummed with new purpose as healing energy began flowing into Marcus's body. "Dr. Keth!" Overlord Zephyr's roar shook the chamber. "What are you doing?" "Saving a life," she replied, not looking away from Marcus as his wounds began to close and his strength returned. The escape laboratory erupted in chaos as alarms blared throughout the facility. Overlord Zephyr's voice boomed over the speakers. "Security to Lab 7 immediately. Dr. Keth has committed treason against the Empire." Marcus felt strength flooding back into his limbs as the regenerative energy coursed through his body. His ribs knitted together, internal bleeding stopped, and the neural trauma that had left him weak and disoriented faded like a bad dream. He sat up on the table, breaking the restraints that suddenly seemed fragile as paper. "Can you move?" Dr. Keth asked urgently, her hands flying over the laboratory's control systems. Emergency barriers slammed down, sealing the exits, but she was accessing override codes faster than the security protocols could adapt. "Better than I have in days," Marcus replied, testing his newfound strength. "But we're trapped in here." "Not quite." She pulled a small device from her medical kit, a personal teleporter, standard equipment for senior researchers. "This will get us to the docking bay, but only for 2 people and only once." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors beyond the sealed doors. The V3 security forces were closing in, their weapons charging with the distinctive whine that Marcus had learned to fear during the border conflicts. "You don't have to do this," he said, watching her work. "You could still claim I overpowered you, took the teleporter." "No." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "I've spent 5 years watching my people torture and murder innocents. I've told myself it was for the greater good, for scientific advancement, for the glory of the Empire. But today, looking into your eyes, I finally understood what we've become." The doors shuddered as security forces began cutting through them with plasma torches. Sparks showered down as the metal began to glow and buckle. "What we've become?" Marcus asked. "Monsters," she said simply. "We've let our technological superiority convince us that other species exist only for our benefit. We've forgotten that. Intelligence and consciousness create responsibility, not privilege." She handed him a spare sidearm from the laboratory's emergency kit. "The ship I'm taking you to, it's my personal research vessel. Fast, cloaked, and equipped for long-range travel. I've been using it to study human colonies from a distance. And now we're going to use it to reach the neutral zone. From there, you can contact your people, warn them about the Empire's next offensive." The doors burst open as Vetheri soldiers poured into the laboratory, their advanced armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Overlord Zephyr strode in behind them, his face twisted with rage. "Dr. Nisaketh," he snarled, "you are charged with treason, conspiracy, and violation of the species protection protocols. Surrender immediately, and your death will be swift." "The species protection protocols?" Dr. Keth laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling genocide now?" She activated the teleporter, and the world dissolved around them in a shimmer of blue energy. The last thing Marcus saw was Overlord Zephyr's expression of absolute fury as his prize specimens vanished before his eyes. They materialized in a small docking bay where a sleek, Vetheri ship waited. Dr. Keth was already moving toward the controls. As Marcus recovered from the disorientation of teleportation, "Welcome aboard the Harmony," she said, powering up the engines. Population: 2 refugees with nowhere left to run. The Alliance 3 days into their journey toward the neutral zone. Marcus found Dr. Keth in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars. The Harmony was running silent, its advanced cloaking systems hiding them from the Vetheri pursuit. Ships that had been hunting them across 3 star systems. Having second thoughts? He asked, joining her at the viewport. "Every moment," she admitted. "I've thrown away everything I've ever known. My career, my status, my entire identity within the Empire. By now, they've probably declared me mentally defective and erased my name from all records." Marcus studied her profile in the starlight. Over the past 3 days, he'd learned more about her than he'd ever known about any Vetheri. She'd grown up in the Empire's elite academies, been trained from childhood to view other species as subjects for study rather than beings deserving of respect. Her rebellion hadn't come from hatred of her people, but from a gradual awakening to their moral failures. "What made you change?" he asked. "You," she said simply, "and the others before you. Each time I performed those procedures, I saw something in human eyes that my training told me couldn't exist. Compassion, hope, the willingness to sacrifice for others. My people claimed these were evolutionary weaknesses, but I began to suspect they were actually strengths we'd lost." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Dr. Keth moved to the communication console, her expression tense. "This is either very good news or very bad news." The holographic display activated, showing a human face Marcus didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing the uniform of the United Earth Defense Corps. "This is Admiral Torres of the UEDC Vigilance," the figure said. "We've been monitoring Vetheri communications and learned of your situation. Dr. Keth, we're prepared to offer you asylum in exchange for intelligence about Empire operations." "What kind of intelligence?" she asked cautiously. "Defensive capabilities, ship movements, research projects. Anything that might help us protect our colonies from future attacks." Marcus saw the conflict in her eyes. She'd already betrayed her people once to save his life. Now they were asking her to betray them again to save countless others. "There's something else," Admiral Torres continued. "We've received reports of other Vetheri questioning the Empire's methods. Scientists, military officers, even some government officials. If you're willing to help us establish contact, we might be able to build a coalition for peace." Dr. Keth looked at Marcus, then back at the Admiral. "I need guarantees, not just for my safety, but for any other Vetheri who might be willing to defect. We need protection, new identities, a chance to build something better." "Done," Torres replied immediately. "Dr. Keth, you've already proven that change is possible. Now let's see if we can prove it on a larger scale." As the transmission ended, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since the massacre at Kepler Station. Hope for the future. Not just for an end to the war, but for something unprecedented, true cooperation between species. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Dr. Keth turned from the console, her expression transformed by new purpose. "Now we build a bridge between your people and mine, between the Empire and the colonies, between the past and a future where species work together instead of destroying each other." She gestured toward the stars ahead. "The neutral zone is just the beginning, Mark. We're going to change everything." Outside, the stars seemed brighter, filled with possibility instead of threat. 2 refugees had become something more. The first, ambassadors of a new age of cooperation between the species of the galaxy.